Hey everybody, I'm Angie Goff, and this is the Oh My Goff Show. For nearly 2 decades, I've covered big stories and big names, whether it was reporting from the royal wedding, the Super Bowl, or sitting down with the First Lady. There's one thing I know for sure. Behind every headline is a human story, one filled with ups, downs, laughter, and life lessons. Each episode, we'll tap into some pretty incredible minds, people who've found true success in chasing their dream or changing the world. It's the story behind the story that I hope will inspire your own. This is the Oh My Goff Show with Angie Goff. Okay, guys, so the best way to describe my guest this week is she is a force. Jamie Kern Lima is a self-made millionaire, co-founder of It Cosmetics, which recently sold for $1.2 billion to L'Oreal. I had a chance to speak with Jamie about her journey and asked what she would tell others going for something that they believe in. How do you face all the no's along the way? How do you use your own personal why to drown out all of the others' doubts? I hope that you're able to find something in this fun conversation and enlightening conversation that keeps you in the game and above all else, keeps you moving. People say, who's coming up on the show? Who's going to be your next guest? I'm like, you know, that girl, Jamie Kern Lima, the woman who started a business in her living room and then just happened to sell it for $1.2 billion. You know that, Jamie. There is so much sweat, tears, rejection, struggle, so much that is just packed into that one headline. And so that's what I wanted to ask you about, how it started, why it started, and how you got from there to where you are now.
Yeah, Angie, thank you for that. It's so true. And thanks for covering those kind of stories on your show too, because I think when we just see the headline of everything looks easy. It looks like, oh, maybe they have what it takes to succeed, but I'm not getting traction, or I keep getting rejected, or, and part of why I wrote Believe It, my book, is because I kept getting messages from women online constantly saying like, did you just get lucky, or was it easy? And then they feel alone in their own struggles or alone in their own setbacks. And so I feel like when we share the stories behind the stories, it's how we all realize like, oh, it's possible for me to, go from not believing in myself to believing in myself, or not trusting myself to trusting myself. And that's really what my story is all about. I started It Cosmetics in my living room, and as we're talking now, right now, at this moment, it's the largest makeup company in the country, largest luxury makeup company, which is wild. But, what's so important to share is that it almost didn't happen, and it almost didn't make it a million times. And my real journey was, from the point I finally launched it in my living room, it was 3 years of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of no's from all of the beauty retailers and department stores. I used to always put on a pedestal, and I loved shopping in their stores. And I thought, oh, I'm going to launch my idea into the world and they're just going to love it like I do. And that is not what happened. It was literally everyone saying, change this, change that. We don't think this is going to work. We don't think customers will buy makeup from people that are real. Like we think, change that. And it was just no after no after no after no. Some of them even said, you're not the right fit for us or our customers. And today we're a top selling brand in all their stores, but 3 years of them saying no, and not just no for now, but like no forever. And just how do we not let rejection talk ourselves out of our dreams is really the journey. That's really the journey. Because anyone facing rejection right now, the most important thing is they know they're not alone. And it's just part of every journey, really.
And I love how you talk about that. And you talk about how rejection is protection. You said that, and you have a very personal story that's behind that, right?
Yes, I think this is so true. And I think that in particular for women, it's so important that we start embracing rejection. I think self-doubt kills more dreams than almost anything out there. And I think so many people probably listening to us, like at this moment, so many people know they have a dream on their heart, or they know they have something more to give or offer the world or create, or an idea they want to launch, or something they want to do, but they end up letting self-doubt take over because they're scared of failure or of rejection. And, my hope and prayer, and a big part of why I wrote Believe It, is I hope to shift perspective around rejection. I hope, even though it's painful, even though it's not fun. I think when we can really embrace it and not take it personal and see it as part of our journey, because what I have learned, and I do believe to be true, is rejection is God's protection. Some people say rejection is the universe's protection. And, I have so many stories of rejection in my book, but one that stands out in particular, I think you might be referencing is, we were a couple years into building It Cosmetics. We got down to under $1,000 in our bank account, which was my personal and business bank account. I didn't know how we were going to stay alive in business. And I had been just getting hundreds of rejections from all the stores. Well, we finally got this inbound phone call from a potential investor. And I was so excited. I thought, oh my gosh, because this was a big private equity company who had invested in all these products you and I buy at the grocery store. They made them household names. And I thought, wow. And they loved our product at Cosmetics. So I thought, if they invest in us, A, I'm not going to go bankrupt. B, maybe they can use their leverage to try and get us yeses from all of these retailer stores that keep telling me no. So I thought this was going to be life-changing. And we started doing meetings with the potential investor and their whole teams. And it got down to the final meeting. And I thought it was going to change my life. I was so excited. And I'll never forget, I flew in for this final meeting. My husband was there as well. And the head guy was about 3 feet from me in person. And his whole teams were there. And they said to me, congratulations, we love your product. You should be so proud of everything you're doing with It Cosmetics. But it's a no. We're going to pass on investing in your company. And I was like, okay. And at that point, I'm so used to hearing no, right? This is a couple of years of hundreds of no's. So I said, well, can you tell me why? Can you share with me why? Because feedback is a gift. Usually. And he paused for a long time and he said, do you want me to be really honest with you? And I'm like, yes, please. And he's standing about 3 feet from me. And he says, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. And I remember in that moment, a couple of things, right? I got, first of all, a lifetime of self-doubt and body doubt. I felt it flood my body all at once. So I wasn't even mad at him. I felt when he was saying these words to me, it almost felt like I was staring my own fears straight in the eye and just trying to keep my faith bigger than them. But I'll never forget, there was this moment, Angie, where when he said those words to me, I just don't think women will buy makeup from someone who looks like you with your body and your weight. I got this feeling deep down in my gut, just a strong feeling of intuition that said he's wrong. He's wrong. And I felt it. And, listen, after that rejection, I went and cried. I cried in my car, all those things. But here's the thing is so many times, all of us, no matter who we are, somebody looks us in the eye and in one way or another says to us, you're not enough, or you're not the right fit, or change who you are, to get my love or to fit in or to get in my stores or to get my investment, whatever it is. And those are the moments that change our lives, because we have those decisions to make of, do I trust my gut and stick with my authentic mission, or continue showing up authentically as who I am? Or do I try to change who I am for someone else's approval? And so after that investor said those words that were really hurtful to me, although I appreciate his honesty from his perspective, 6 years later, I hadn't heard from him. 6 years later, when we were acquired by L'Oreal, it was the largest acquisition in their history. And because of that, and L'Oreal is a public company, it was on the homepages everywhere. So the Wall Street Journal homepage was like, It Cosmetics sold for $1.2 billion cash, and this whole thing. 6 years later, when that happened, I heard from that investor. I heard from him, and it was the first time in 6 years. And he said, congratulations on the L'Oreal deal. I was wrong. And two things I learned, had he invested, it would have been the most successful investment in this firm's history. But also, rejection is God's protection, right? Rejection is the universe's protection. What's amazing is, had he believed in me 6 years earlier, right, instead of rejecting me, I had no money. I was so desperate at the time, I probably would have given him the majority of the company for almost no money, right? But because he rejected me, he didn't believe in me. By the time we did sell the company, I was the largest shareholder. And so it was rejection is protection, even when it doesn't feel like it at the time.
Yeah, $1.2 billion and still the CEO. I mean, come
Yeah,
on. And
yeah.
that is such an amazing story. And when we talk about your book, Believe It, I think what I love is that you share a lot of these mistakes or these life lessons. You do a lot of reflection. And one thing you mentioned was that, hey, I wish I knew right off the bat that when you are presenting a new idea, which is essentially what you were doing at the time to change the way we viewed the beauty industry, to use real people. Imagine that, people that look like you and me that have real skin conditions. But the fact that you were so shocked that they couldn't see it in your eyes, but when it's never been done before, and that's where a lot of people I feel like are they're pounding their heads against the wall, saying, "Look, why can't you see it how I see it? Like this is the future." I work in news. I remember getting, called into the office because I started talking about Twitter on the air and saying, "Hey, follow me on
Mm.
Twitter," because I was doing traffic at the time and it was in real time and it was fast. And I got called in and the boss and said, "Don't promote other websites on our air. You need to send them to our news site." And I was kept saying, "No, but this is different." And it was just this constant fight. When you see something that others don't, it can be really defeating too, as you mentioned. And you talk about that, and also being able to choose to turn that volume up or to turn it down.
Yes. What you just shared is so, so important. If I had learned, and here's the thing is, um, you know, when I wrote this book, it's not just about like how did I build at cosmetics. It's really a book for every woman, every person who wants to overcome self-doubt and learn how, right? And the lesson that you just shared that I think is so important, is, anytime we're doing anything that's new or novel or hasn't been done before, what I've realized and learned time and time again now, and wish I learned earlier. And by the way, it could be launching a company, but it could also be showing up on social media in a certain way. It could be putting our art or our blog or our book out into the world. It could be anything that we're doing. And what I learned is that most experts, even the most touted visionaries, they have the hardest time imagining something being successful unless it's already been done before, unless there's subconscious proof in the back of their mind that tells them, oh, yes, this has been done before and it succeeded. Therefore, I think this will work. Anybody in your community listening to this, anyone listening, watching us right now, when you show up authentically, which is the only way to have real connection, real human connection, right? With another person, with your online community, with your customers, when you show up authentically as a person or as a brand, it's by definition never been done before. It's by definition new or novel. So don't be surprised when so many of the experts who are awesome and mean so well, or when friends and family around you who are often awesome and mean so well, don't be surprised or your partner, don't be surprised when they can't imagine it succeeding. And that lesson is huge because sometimes we hear other people's discouragement and it's easy to internalize it and start doubting ourselves or start doubting our idea or start doubting our talent or doubting our gift. You almost have to get really good at cheering for yourself when you're someone who is going to go after a dream or is going to pursue a goal or is going to put your heart out into the world. Because what I've learned, and now I know so many people that share this in common too, is like most people, even though they mean well, they typically only cheer for you after you've made it. Like,
Yes.
right? They cheer for you after you got the show or after your company's doing well or after people are buying your book. But in the process, they're like, are you sure? Are you qualified? Why are, all the stuff, right? And so the other lesson, I talk about this a lot and believe it, that you'd mentioned, is about the idea of volume. And here's the thing: a lot of us have people in our family. It could be our parents, our partner, our friends that have been childhood friends. So we don't want to be like, peace out, but they're still in our lives. But when we realize every time we share an idea or a dream with them, we start to, their own self-doubt starts to like project onto us and we start to talk ourselves out of it, or lower our own vibration. And so, one of the tools I talk about in Believe It in the book is just this idea of learning to really control your own microphone, right? You're in news, so
Yes.
you know this so well. But it's like if you imagine, like every one of us, right? My friend Bob Goff taught me this. I don't think
Yes.
any relation to Angie Goff. I'm
No,
not
but I
sure.
love him to death too.
Oh, you do?
I do.
Before our interview, I'm like, oh, I'm excited. This is going to be another Goff I love so much.
I think we follow each other on Twitter, and I have his books.
Just like you, he's like this light in the world that's just amazing. And I was in a conversation with Bob Goff, just a small group of people, and he was talking about this idea of the microphone. I started practicing it in my life, and it was so life-changing that I asked his blessing to be able to write about it in my book. So I wanted to share it with everyone on how to do this. But what he said, because this started with someone who was talking about like that she loves her parents, but anytime she talks about her hopes and dreams, like she feels so judged and she starts to just like doubt herself. And what do you do in that case when you don't want to be like, peace out, mom, I'm out of here, but you want to love the people around you, but you also want to become who you are and all of who you are, right? And his advice was so good. I literally wrote like half a chapter about how to do this. Was he said, imagine we all have our own microphone that we're holding. We decide, just like a television news reporter, when you see them on the streets and they hand their microphone to someone, they typically never let go of that microphone, or that eyewitness takes the mic and runs, right? It goes on for hours. You hold on your mic and then you decide when to take it back. And he said, in life, imagine that we all have our own microphone and we decide who we hand it to and on what topics, right? So his solution that I thought was so brilliant, I talk a lot about how to do this, is, when, maybe when we realize, we start to do an audit of who's around us, who is our circle of friends, who's our circle of colleagues, who do we go to the gym with? And we start to just pay attention. Oh, when I talk to this person about this, I instantly feel like, so I start doubting myself, or I instantly then don't feel like I have what it takes. Or so what you do is you take the microphone back from them on those topics, meaning, you talk to, maybe it's your mom or your partner, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us don't have a circle around us in our own homes or in our lives where they understand our hopes and dreams. So, for a lot of us, what we have to learn to do is talk to them about the weather, about what's on tonight on, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What's on Fox 5 tonight? What's for dinner? What's on the whatever? Who got picked on The Bachelor? Whatever it is, and you still have those relationships, but then you take your microphone back from them on things like, I'm writing a book and I'm going to share my story with the world, or I'm going to start a big social platform, or whatever it is, or I want to go run a marathon. And we find people in our lives that we're able to share that connection with. And maybe they're people we've met online. Maybe it's a mentor from afar. For me, it was Oprah for years, long before I had met her. When I would watch her, I felt my own vibration rise. I felt like, oh, where I come from doesn't determine where I'm going. And so for me, even though I hadn't met her yet, it was someone I wanted to hand my imaginary microphone to. Mm-hmm. And so I talk about how we can do that in our lives. And I think it's so important because if we don't learn to do that, I think it prevents us from ever becoming all of who we are.
Oh, absolutely. So in a sense, I mean, we just have to become better audio operators, right? Decide when to tune people in and tune them out. I just love the story about QVC, your first time going on QVC. And because this is the ultimate story of following your heart and following your gut and staying true to yourself. I feel like that's thrown around all the time. Stay true to yourself. Every time I ask someone, what's your best advice? Stay true to yourself. But this exemplifies, this is textbook, stay true to yourself. I would love for you to share that story.
Yeah, I think that we all kind of know or believe these things like, oh, I need to be true to myself, right? But then when it comes to real life and how we show up and how we decide what to do when everything's on the line, that's when it gets really tough to not just like know our values or know what we believe in, but then to actually live them. And I talk a lot in the book about how while authenticity alone doesn't automatically guarantee success, inauthenticity guarantees failure. And I saw that now play out over a decade in the tens of thousands of entrepreneurs I've had the blessing of meeting, and very few ever make it. I think it's how Oprah has made it. Nobody was ever like her or is ever like her. And to reveal all the parts that normally people would hide. That's how we create connection. That's our superpower. And I after 3 years of hearing no from everyone. I mean, I Angie, and every ounce of my being, I kept feeling in my gut like, okay, I created this great product with It Cosmetics. It works for me, and I have hereditary rosacea. Nothing else would work. And I just kept feeling in my gut like I need to not just launch this product, but also show on real women, every age, size, skin challenge, skin tone, like show real people using this and show how it works. And I kept having this vision. When I launched the company, it was even before YouTube was doing this. So no one was doing this. All we saw was these ads on television in commercials where it was usually somebody with the same skin tone. They always were like the same age and flawless skin. And you never saw anybody with, that looked like you and like me. You know what I mean? You just never did. And so I had this vision, oh my gosh, if I can create a product that works and like try to shift culture however I possibly can in the beauty industry of how they define beauty. Like that was my deep mission, right? For every, because growing up when I'd see those ads, I always loved them. I always aspired to look like that, but deep down inside, right, they always made me feel not enough in this weird way. So I was like, oh my gosh, if I can create a company whose mission is so much bigger than me, and I could try to shift culture in the beauty industry and how they define beauty, and change those images for every little girl out there who's about to start doubting herself, and every adult who still does. And so this big vision. And then all of a sudden, for 3 years, everyone's telling me it's not going to work. Everyone's saying no. And when a retailer says no to you, what they're saying is, I don't think that we can make money from you. Is what they're saying. We don't believe in what you're doing, or that it will sell, or that it will work. And so 3 years of that goes on, including, years of hearing no from QVC. And it's a crazy, wild story I share in the book of how we eventually got a yes to get one shot on QVC. Now, QVC is a live television channel broadcast to 100 million homes. And when you go live, you have this big sales goal each minute that you're live. And if you're not hitting your sales goal, they pull you off, right? And anyhow, after years of rejection, I got one shot, one yes, big yes, to get one chance live on QVC to sell our concealer. And we were only selling 2 to 3 orders a day on our website, barely in business. And I learned, Angie, that I would need to hit their sales goal in the 10-minute window, I would need to sell over 6,000 units of our concealer. And I also learned the deal was going to be consignment, meaning I had to figure out how to make all the product, pay for it, ship it in, and then get my one big shot on air for 10 minutes. And if it didn't sell, it would all come back to me, which means we'd be out of business. So it was a big risk, and we applied for an SBA loan just because we had no money. We had literally no money left. We were down to well under $1,000. So we got 22 banks said no, and the 23rd bank said yes, just to fund the inventory for that one order, for QVC, for that one chance in 10 minutes. So basically everything was on the line. I flew out to QVC a week before the airing, and I sat in their parking lot in this rental car all alone. And I just stared at the front of the building, knowing the next time I walked in there, my whole life was going to change, or I would be bankrupt. And here's where the struggle came is, we hired third-party consultants who are amazing. They help a lot of people succeed on selling in television or selling their products in stores. And they all told me the same thing. They said, if you want a chance at succeeding, here's what you need to do. You need to go on the air in your 10 minutes, use this type of model. And all the models look like they're 12, and they were all the same skin tone with flawless skin. And I'm like, listen, what if I just take my makeup off and show my bright red rosacea and show the world how this product works? And what if I put real women of every age and shape and size and skin tone and skin challenge? And I would argue, and I say, because if I'm sitting at home watching, how do I know something's going to work for me if I don't see it on someone who looks like me? To me, it was so common sense, and they were mortified. And here's the thing, they wanted me to win, and they were giving me the best advice they knew how on what they said is the only way people will buy a product from something from they would say these unattainable images of aspiration that no one can possibly look like, but that is what sells product. And I'm like, So it's tough. So I sat in that rental car knowing that everything was on the line, knowing I had one shot. And it's, my gut was telling me one thing, right? And experts were telling me another. And these are the moments that define our lives, is when we learn to hear ourselves, hear our gut, and then make the decision to trust it. And it's not always easy, right? And I sat in that rental car uh, every day for a week, and I just, I prayed, I cried, but I also imagined who that woman was watching on the other end. And I don't know why, but I kept imagining a single mom in Nebraska folding laundry who was like too busy to remember that she mattered and that she was beautiful. And I just kept imagining, like, if she was going to turn on her television for a few seconds and I was going to be blessed with a few seconds of her time, like, it came down to this moment where I realized I'd rather have her see me showing women who look like her, calling them beautiful and meaning it. Even if she buys nothing, I'd rather do that than sell a ton of product and stand for nothing. And so I knew what I had to do, but it didn't mean it was easy. And I remember walking into the QVC studios and for that one shot, that 10 minutes. And when we went live, so I remember standing there in the studio, and there's this giant countdown clock on the floor that started at the 10-minute mark. I was sweating so much, and I'm not nervous for television, but it was that everything was on the line, and I was shaking. I remember like hoping my Spanx caught all my sweat because I was like, I can't be sweating through a dress on national television. I was freaking out. But I remember the clock started, and I remember the moment my bare face before shot came up on national television, and I walked over to all the models that I chose as real women, all ages, all shapes, all sizes, all skin tones, all skin challenges. And I remember there was about a minute left in the presentation, and the host says, "The tan shade's almost gone, the deep shade's almost sold out." And I was like, and then I remember at the 10-minute mark, the huge sold out sign came up across the screen. I start crying on national television. I remember they cut and then they went to like the next item, which is like Dyson vacuum or Vitamix or Apple iPhone or something. And my husband comes rushing through the double doors of the studio. And I'm like, "Real women have spoken." And I'm like crying. And he's like, "We're not going bankrupt." And this is
such
like
a guy.
such a guy. But that one airing, Andy, turns into 5 that year, 101 the next year. Anyways, for 8 years straight, I did 250 live shows a year on QVC, and we built the largest beauty brand in QVC's history. It is right now at this very moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I only share that because it was 3 years of them saying no. And so, like, no one, whoever's listening and needs to hear this today, no one can tell you how big your dream can be. No one can tell you you're not enough. And when people reject you and they literally look you in the eye and tell you they don't think you're going to make it, or you're not the right fit, or you're not this enough or that enough, like, those are the moments we don't quit, we don't give up. Maybe we cry a little bit, but those are the moments where we listen to our gut and we stay authentic and we keep going. And people who do that are the ones who are able to build something that lasts or that matters or that really, makes a contribution to the world. And I believe every one of us has that inside of us, right? And our life comes down to if we listen to our calling or if we listen to our opposition.
When you walk through our offices, you see every age, every skin tone. Some women in Hermes and some women wearing Walmart. It is non-judgmental. Everyone here is about our bigger mission.
The title of this book is so perfect. It's called Believe It, How to Go from Underestimated to Unstoppable, which is a word that defines you. You are a force of nature. Jamie Kern Lima, I love that you shared your story. And for those of you who have not read the book yet, I highly recommend it, because I think one of the big things, my big takeaways, is that sometimes you've got to let a dream, to go after a dream, to follow your dreams, you got to let another dream go. And you talk more about your TV history, having your skin condition, rosacea, and how that really just is what sparked what has become your brand and has become a path and really a way to not only change an industry, but also to change the minds of women and how we view ourselves. So there are so many stories. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you all day, especially about my friend Natasha and the squirrel and the big balls. You're going to have to go to the book for that. And also, I just love how the book, 100% of the proceeds going to Feed America. You're a true angel. And as we wrap up, the best advice, if you had to give it in a nutshell, like I like to say, dream big, pray bigger. It always brings me right back. It brings me right back who I need to give it up to.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that so much. I mean, oh gosh. So can I share a couple really fast?
Sure. Yes. Let's tap into your toolbox. I know you got one.
So right away, I would just say that, so many people are stuck and they're in setbacks. And I think that, Joel Osteen once said, our setbacks are so often our setups or God's setups for what we're called to do. And one of the things I talk about in the book is that champions aren't made when the game is easy. And I think that the past 15 months for every one of us has not been easy. But I believe God made every one of us champions. And I think that the hard times we go through, I really believe that they are setbacks that turn into setups. I believe the hard times we go through are things that actually make us stronger to be able to carry the weight of our future successes when they happen. So that's a really, really big one for me. And then the other words I would share that are, I think that I've leaned on so many times, right? Because I think especially as women, we struggle with imposter syndrome or feeling like we don't have what it takes or we're not smart enough, or we're not qualified enough. And so many times when I would start to think, oh, am I really qualified to do this? Other people have started beauty companies. They know what they're doing, right? All those things that we tell ourselves, our inner critic. And there's famous words that I'd always call on. And they go like this, in case someone needs to hear them today, especially if you're struggling with self-doubt or feeling like you're not qualified enough. And those famous words say, God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. And for me, what I believe that to mean is every one of us, if we have something on our heart where feel like we need to give or serve or create, and we can't shake it, I think that's part of our calling. And if God doesn't call the qualified, he qualifies the called. I believe that means every one of us has everything we need inside of us right now to accomplish our greatest dreams. And part of our greatest journey in life is learning to believe it for ourselves.
Oh, and you're helping us do that, especially with your book, Believe It, How to Go From Underestimated to Unstoppable. Jamie Kern Lima, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You don't have to be a broadcaster. You don't have to be a singer, an artist to have one of these. We all have one of these. Take your power back. Take your mic back. When you're hearing things from the outside. And I think it's visuals like this that can really help us, especially during those times of self-doubt. We all end up there. We don't all naturally just wake up happy, ready to take on the world, ready to go. It is a process, and we always say, trust the process. But sometimes it goes a little slower than we expect. Check out her book. I listened to it on audiobook, and it was like perfect pick me up in the car whenever I was going to and fro from anywhere. And I always felt like I walked away. I got out of the car with a new tool. Thank you so much for joining us for this week. I hope you stay inspired, and we'll see you next time. You watched or listened to the very end. Thanks so much. Don't worry, you can watch more by subscribing to the Oh My Goff Show on YouTube, Facebook Watch, Twitch, or Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your favorite shows.